Hello, Rory McKiernan here, and welcome to the Love and Courage podcast. My guest in this episode is an incredible human being, Tom Prendergast, a Limerick man, an artist, a community volunteer, a DJ, former record store owner, former major record label boss, former undocumented citizen Irishman in New York, and a man with hundreds, if not thousands, of stories to share. I'm only sad that we couldn't do 10 hours of recording together. Had a really enjoyable experience chatting with Tom, my first time ever meeting Tom, and looking forward to sharing it with you now. So before we begin, and on the topic of stories, I have some news to share. A couple of bits of news. The big one obviously is about my book, which is coming out not too long to go now, the end of March. Hitching for Hope, A Journey into the Heart and Soul of Ireland will be published by US publisher Chelsea Green. Hitching for Hope it's part memoir, lots of different stories from throughout my life. It's part hitchhiking travel adventure about my listening tours around Ireland, interviewing people about the topic of hope and hearing about struggle, injustice, but also possibility, hope, survival, and in many ways a tribute to the spirit of the people of Ireland and spirit of people everywhere. And it's, in that sense, it's a manifesto. I hope it is a manifesto for hope and healing. And I'm really excited to share it with you. And I'm really grateful for all the support I've received along the way, trying to get the book over the line. It hasn't been easy. It's been a long, long road, but we're nearly there. And momentum is building. The Irish Times mentioned it recently as one to watch out for. I've got a couple of big talks coming up, tour plans for around Ireland, the UK, the US, and maybe Canada. I'd love to go to Australia as well. So who knows? And it'd be great to see it go around into different countries as well. So again, that's up to that's up to however things might flow, and in many ways, whoever might get behind it, and that might be you in whatever form you can. Maybe you're a reader, maybe you can help get it into bookshops in your area, although it should be in all the main bookshops by the end of March. But all support will be gratefully received when it does come out, and if there's some way you can help push it along before then please do get in touch. podcast@loveandcourage.org. podcast@loveandcourage.org. And the other big news, and I won't delay too long before we get stuck into the Tom conversation. The other big news is that I have joined an incredible organisation known as Narrative 4. They're a global organisation. They have an Irish registered non-profit, a registered charity based in Limerick, and it was co-founded by Lisa Consiglio. Better get your name right, Lisa, if you're listening, and the renowned Irish author Colin McCann, and amazing other people like Lee Keelock, and my friend Colin McInumber is on the board of the Irish organisation, and lots of other people involved. And I've joined as European Director to lead the expansion, national and European expansion of the organisation. The organisation was set up to foster empathy, connection, well-being, leadership and creativity, and most of all, empathy in a world where quite often there's a disconnect and not enough space for human beings to sit together, and particularly through the prism of story, where we get to share each other's stories. So Narrative 4 trailblazes a technique known as the story exchange, and has worked with thousands of young people throughout Ireland, and also with human rights organisations, with businesses. And recently we did a workshop with doctors in Dublin, and it was amazing to witness GPs have this reflective space to reflect on their own journey, their own personal story. And particularly it works well on the theme of courage, when people have time to share stories from the past and from the present. And Narrative 4 has also been working in Palestine, South Africa, Mexico, and throughout the US. So it's exciting times, folks. A lot of work ahead. It's busy time. We're keen for partnerships, particularly with those working with young people in education, youth and community work. So check it out. Narrative 4, the number 4, narrative4.com and /Ireland for the Irish office. As I say, we're based in Limerick, but working nationally and now internationally. And big new adventure for me, obviously, with the book coming out, lots happening, and but I'm still going to keep with the podcast. There was a bit of a pause there as I finished the book, but I'm going to be back on track now, and lots of great conversations lined up. And let's just get stuck into the conversation with Tom Prendergast, an amazing man, as I say, and hope you enjoy. Tom, thanks very much for joining me on the Love and Courage podcast on this wet and grey and overcast, but kind of nice day at the same time.
Lovely,
It has a few different qualities going on.
I'm wearing my summer jacket here.
It's quite mild.
It is, yeah.
And so we just met up for the very first time in the famous Cheese Press Cafe in Ennistimon, and it was a hive of activity. And I almost felt that this chat wasn't going to happen, because we could have got immersed into the Cheese Press conversation.
Yeah.
There was a real magic in the air in there.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about your experiences of that place and what you feel about the Cheese Press?
Well, like yourself, it is a magical place. I was telling you in the car on the way over that I lived in America for 20 years, from 1980 to 2000, and I came back in 2000, and I have a house down in Quilty, and I lived down there for a number of years, and I used to do a lot of driving around, and I spent a lot of time in Ennistimon, and I recognised in 2000, I was like looking at Ennistimon, I was thinking like, wow, this town is ripe for something spectacular to happen. And it didn't happen for a long, long time. I always thought Kilrush and Ennistimon, they both had this potential, and but finally it's happening. Ennistimon is happening. Kilrush, I don't think so. And I think Sinead is one of the instigators for this renaissance of this town, and the Cheese Press, is her venue, and it's very exciting. It's really lovely to go down there. It reminds me of the market in Limerick on a Saturday. You go into the market in Limerick on a Saturday, and I always say about the market, it's the one place in Limerick where everybody is happy for a few hours. And that's really important, because the rest of the week can be a bit of a slog. And I feel like that inside in the Cheese Press, everybody who gets in there, everybody has a smile on their face, and there's great conversation and there's great activity, and Sinead is in the middle of it all, She's a powerful woman, and it's a brilliant place, absolutely brilliant. And there's other little places around the town as well. There's that the woman that does the weaving and whatever. That's kind of a magical place. Fantastic place. And the other place up the street across from the courthouse, and the courthouse, of course, is an amazing place, I think.
Oh la la, and the cafe as well. No, it's an amazing part of the world. So I'll get the plug in there. Visit Ennistimon, spend your money,
and
spend
Catherine
your holidays.
Comber, actually, who runs the courthouse. She oversees that whole place. She is an amazing woman, also, she's a fantastic woman, and her husband used to run the labour exchange there, and he was a great guy as well. But she's a fantastic woman.
They're not always identified as community leaders as we expect. Sometimes we name politicians or business people as community leaders, but sometimes they can be in retail, they can be in hospitality, they can be in culture. But I once heard the term, I don't know if my memory is accurate or not, enough, that in France they have a term community animateurs, like animators in the community, not animation as such, but people that kind of bring community together. We have community development here, and in the US they talk about community organising, and quite political. But there are these people that just have it naturally, and I don't know if they're disproportionately female as well. Quite often my experience is that women are powerhouses at just bringing people together.
I 100% agree with that, and they're equally as important as the politicians and business leaders and whatever, these people that just sort of float underneath, but yet have this huge power to bring people together, and not always recognised either. Actually, mostly under-recognised, I think. There's people in Limerick like that are just really powerful and that can make things happen. And I was telling you earlier on, I do a DJ thing in Limerick, and I've always seen it as being that thing that brings people together. I view the DJing thing, when people are there in the room and everybody just is smiling and is happy, and it's kind of a love fest, I say, And I remember one night I did it there a couple of months ago, and at the end of the night I just said, listen, everybody, can we just kind of stick together? Can we, when I do this, can you just keep coming back and bring your friends with you? And it's creating a community, a little community within itself. And I'm a huge believer in that,
How long have you been doing that? How long have you been DJing?
Not that long, actually, since about 2014. Limerick was City of Culture in 2014, was National City of Culture in 2014. And Katie and I, my girlfriend, soon-to-be wife, we organised a number of things that year outside, not under the auspices of the official City of Culture thing, but we organised things as a sideline. And they were very, very successful. One was an exhibition of painting by a really great Limerick painter, Brian McMahon, in an old building in Limerick called the Sailors' Home, which had been closed for 30 years. And we actually got permission to open it and have the exhibition in there. It was just fantastic. It was a real success. And we had a thing, we were involved in a thing called Are You Dancing, along with a lad called David Studer. And we did one dance that David oversaw in St. John's Square, an outdoor event, and it was like from the show band era. And it was brilliant because I was really into the show bands when I was a kid. And then at the end of the year, we'd repeated it in a hall in Limerick called St. John's Pavilion, which is in the middle of town. I grew up right across the road from it. And that didn't have a dance in 30 years. So we did that as well. And again, it was these very, very powerful, low-key, but very powerful community events. So then I met a guy, John Greenwood was his name, who was again one of these guys who was doing things in Limerick all the time. And he was running a bar called The Blind Pig and Dr. John's. One upstairs was Dr. John's and downstairs was a Blind Pig. And I asked him, I said, John, can I do a DJ night? And he was like, yeah, sure. And it continued from then. I don't do it regularly. I wish I did it more regularly. But I do it, and I love it. I absolutely love it. I do it in a place now called The Commercial. And it's just, again, it's the best night. You know, as I said, everybody has a smile on their face and everybody goes home happy, you know. And
love it. Yeah. It feels like you hear so much about the dance hall era in Ireland, even in Jamaica, the dance hall. But, and obviously we have like nightclubs and discos and all that, but there definitely has been and there's a lot of talk in Dublin at the moment of the closing down of nightclubs. And they are massively culturally important and for the wellness of people in society, for people to have a place to gather and to dance. Yeah. The importance of dance alone.
It's amazing. And it's amazing, you know, when I do these nights, the age group is like from 18 to 70, you know. Everybody is there. Parents are there with their younger kids, you know. And it's a really wonderful thing to see. It's just so joyous, the whole thing. And Rory, I mean, I've sort of wandered into all this stuff by accident. As I said, I was in America for 20 years. I ran a record company, Bar None Records. They might be giants, and Edwin Collins and Tindersticks and Bill Drummond, you know, really great stuff. And it's still going. It's been going for 33 years now. I'm not involved anymore. It's run by a guy called Glenn Morrow, who was my partner, and he still does it. And I managed Luca Bloom, as we said before we came on the air here. I managed him for his first 2 albums. And I went to America in 1980, 27 years of age, a little bit lost, didn't really know what I was doing. I went to college. When I left school, I went to college in UCG. Shouldn't have gone. I wasn't academic at all. And I was very, very lost. So I had 2 friends who had gone to America before me, 2 guys from Limerick who went to college in Galway with me as well. And one of them came home one Christmas and he said, Tom, I'll buy you a ticket if you come to America. And I was blown away by this. You know, I didn't have any money. And he said, yeah, I'll pay for it. You know, I'll look after you when you come over. And I went. And I worked as a bartender. I lived in a town called Hoboken, New Jersey, which was a shipbuilding town in its day. The industry had died. Hoboken had kind of died a death. But a club opened in town called Maxwell's, rock and roll club. And kids started coming out to go to Maxwell's and looking at this town. It was a mile square, beautiful little town on the banks of the Hudson River, across from Manhattan. 1 stop on the train, 10 minutes. And I lived there and I got a job in Maxwell's, the club in town, you know, as a bartender. Saved my money, opened up a record shop, and then started a record company, Bar None Records, and got into management and opened up a second record shop. So it was a dream come true, you know, from this lost young man to a guy that was having the time of his life in America. So I lived there for 20 years, and then I came back to Ireland because I wanted to. I had been married. My marriage broke up. I didn't have any kids, so it made all of that very easier. yeah. My wife and I, or my ex-wife and I, we remained good friends. It was all amicable. And I had bought a house in Quilty, just down the road from here, that I was going to use as a summer home, but I ended up living there. And there's a guy down in Quilty, his name is Richard Sharp. He's a great, great painter, and he's also a wall builder and whatever. So I started building walls with him down there. You know, I came back from America in August of 2000. By September, I was building walls, and I built them all through the winter with Richard down there. And some days I'd be there, and I'd be thinking like, Jesus, what happened? You know, out in the wind, like a day like today now, really bad days, lifting big bloody rocks that were the size of like little portable TVs, you know, and I'd be thinking like, Tom, what are you after doing? You're after leaving this wonderful life in New York, and here you are on the edge of a cliff, you know, building stone walls. Anyhow, I did all that, and I did that. I was down there for about 2 years, and then I was one day, I was in a van with a friend of mine. I was down in Kilkee at this stage, working with a friend of mine. We were building kitchens. And I was in the van with him one day, and he had a book of Sean O'Casey plays on the front of the van up on the dashboard, and I was looking at it, and I was looking at the image, and I was thinking like, how do they do this? How do they put images on the front of books? And I said, I'm going to find out. So I applied to go to art college, and I went to art college.
Can I ask how old you were roughly around this period?
I was late 40s. I went to America when I was 27, came back when I was 47, almost 48. And I went to college just short of my 50th birthday. And I went to art college and I studied painting. I never did find out how they got the images on the front of books, by the way. But
there's time.
There is still time, yeah. So I went to art college and I did that. I got a degree and I paint. And then I met Katie Verling, who was running Glore, and we became a couple, and we're still together, and we're getting married this year. We've been together for 16 years. And she was running Glore. She got very, very sick. She got leukemia in 2007, and she was in hospital in St. James's Hospital for almost a year, on and off. Very, very sick. But she's alive. She made it through. Her health is compromised, and she had to give up her job in Glore.
Glore being a major theatre in
Ennis, yeah. She had to give that up. And slowly but surely, I moved back into Limerick with Katie. We live together in Limerick now. And about 10 years ago, I met a woman in the market in Limerick on a Friday. Magella O'Connor's her name. She runs an organisation in Limerick called the CDP, Community Development Project. And I casually said, listen, you know, do you need any volunteers down there? And she didn't say yes or no, but sometime later she called me up and she said, yeah, do you want to volunteer? And I said, yeah. And so I went down to the community centre in St. Mary's Park and to volunteer with young kids between maybe 4 and 10. And I initially started reading to them, but after about, I'd be there for an hour or 2 hours. After about 15 minutes, they'd be bored and they'd be running around the place. So I was like, okay, this doesn't work, So that's 10 years ago. I'm still going down there. Every Friday I go down. It's only for an hour now. But I've built up huge relationships with these kids. And all I do is I'm just nice to them. And I play with them, like carry them on my back or play tig or whatever, just for an hour. And the ones that were there that were like 9 and 10 years ago are now 19 and 20 and thereabouts. And, they have kids, they get into trouble. It's a place called the Island Field. In
so have you become a quasi-community grandfather here, or?
Yeah. I suppose I have, yeah.
Wow.
But a friend, I suppose, really,
Yeah.
A friend to their parents and a friend to the kids. And I love it, It's a huge part of my world. And I was just saying it to Magella, the woman who runs the CDP. I was saying, primarily I see myself as a volunteer in my whole life. And secondly, an artist and a DJ. But primarily, I think I'm a volunteer. And I get huge satisfaction from it. Absolutely huge. And the woman that I'm primarily involved with under is a woman called Samantha Jackson. She comes to the club with me every week, and our kids, 2 of them are still there. One of them has moved on from there. She's grown up now. And it's hugely satisfying. It's a tough area, very tough. Kids get into trouble there a lot. But, you know, if you can just, what would I say? Just be nice to them and show them that there is another way. You know, it doesn't all have to be bad, you know. Because the minute they walk out their door in the morning, Rory, they're seeing like hellish stuff, you know. Lots of drug dealing, lots of drug abuse, violence. But also, you know, I live in an area of Limerick called Mayorstone, very middle class, for want of another word. I don't know any of my neighbours there. Nothing happens there. I just live there. But you go down there and everybody knows everybody. And there's a great, you know, you walk out the door and it's like, boom, there's life, you know. It's fantastic. And it's for better or for worse, really. You know, it's good and it's bad.
Yeah, it feels like there's can be a real contradiction or juxtaposition there in, like most people would, or a lot of people would aspire to live in the nice house in the hill or in the burbs, or I've lived in several of those places in Dublin and elsewhere, and the deficit of community, a poverty of community, in fact.
Yeah.
And then you go into this other place that has full of poverty and is full of wealth at the same time.
Yeah.
If we could rebalance that.
Yeah.
You
That's
know.
exactly the way it is, you know. Like, not last summer, the summer before, there's an old handball alley down there. You know, the country used to be littered with these handball alleys. They're all gone in Limerick now. This is the only remaining one. And kind of abandoned stuff was dumped there, etc. And I've been looking at it for a few years, and then I just decided, summer of 2018, okay, I'm going to do something with this place. So I got some money from some organisations and decided to paint the place, the handball alley. So I went to the Men's Shed, which was a new organisation on Nicholas Street in Limerick, just outside this area. And I got a couple of the guys there. I said, listen, will you come down and give me a hand to paint this place? And, you know, bring anybody you want with you. So we arrived down one morning in July, maybe June or July. And these guys that I asked came down, and they brought some younger guys, their sons and whatever, friends down with them. Tough-looking guys now. And I was like, oh, Jesus, look at these guys, you know. And after about 20 minutes, they kind of disappeared, these young guys, and they all came back glassy-eyed. You know, they all went away smoking pot or whatever. But they came back. And they did the job, and we had a great day. We had a brilliant day, you know, good laugh, and the work was done and whatever. And at the end of the day, they said, do you want us to come back tomorrow, Tom? And I said, and I suddenly had this realisation, this was all they want, is someplace to go every day and something to do, you know? Because this is the big problem down there. You know, they leave school young and there's nothing, absolutely nothing, you know. So then you just fall into bad ways, either smoking pot every day and getting up to mischief. And
Purpose and belonging.
Exactly.
There's a great proverb, an African proverb. What is it now? It's the young person will burn the village down just to feel its warmth. No, the uninitiated young person will burn the village down just to feel its warmth. You know?
Yeah.
Like, because if kids or anyone else for that matter feel a sense of purpose, welcome and belonging and initiation as part of the wider tribe, they won't want to burn down the tribe or the village or the house.
Yeah. But these guys are cast off from society, you know. People don't go down there. I mean, it's right in the middle of the city, but people won't go down there. You know, they're afraid of it. And it's all understandable, you know, because all you hear are bad things about it.
Yeah.
But as I said, I had that realisation that day. It's like, this is all they want, is something to do, someplace to go in the morning and to feel like you're contributing something, you know. And there were 3 guys in particular, young guys, and I formed a relationship with them. Yeah, sorry. And 2 of them are in jail since, you know, and one of them is not. And one of them is in jail, I think, for 5 years, and it's not going to do him any good. It's not going to do anybody any good.
Recidivism, and he could be out and back in again.
It's just dreadful. It's dreadful. You know, what's he going to learn in there?
Yeah.
Damn all, you know.
There's an assumption that jail sorts out the problem for society.
It only makes them worse, you know. It only makes them worse. And it's heartbreaking. Absolutely heartbreaking. Like last week, Another young lad, I thought he was a little bit older. He's only 16 years of age, and he was put into Oberstown over the Christmas. That's a place for young kids that get into trouble. Yeah. He was in there for Christmas and New Year, his first time away from home, and he's locked up. And I went down to the house last week, and he's from a family of about 11 or 12 kids. He's one of the eldest in the family, I think maybe the second or third eldest. He's 16 years of age. And I said, come on, we'll go for a walk. So I asked him, what happened, what was it like being locked up and whatever. And he told me all this stuff. And he wants to go back to school. He says he wants to go back to school. He's been accepted in a school now in the middle of town. And I said, did you like school? And he goes, yeah, it was okay. He said, I was kind of good at school though. And there's an opportunity here for this kid, to be saved.
Yeah, there's a window.
There's a window, and it's going to be tough, I mean, he said to me, Tom, it's tough growing down here, because when you go, as I said to you earlier, when you look out the window or walk out the door in the morning and you just see bad stuff going on, it's very difficult, and you see your friends getting into this stuff and making a bit of money.
Yeah, there's a saying like you're the sum of the people around you.
Yeah. And it's going to be hard for him, but I'm kind of determined to keep an eye on him and to make sure that he,
Which is all you can do. I mean...
It is, yeah.
And it's
maybe it won't happen.
Yeah, maybe it
won't happen either,
Yeah.
So that's one part of my life in Limerick at the moment. And then I do a radio show every Sunday night on Limerick City Community Radio. It's called The Last Bus Home, from 10:30 until midnight. And I really like that as well. I do my DJ thing, and then I do...
Do you have a moniker? Do you have a DJ?
No. And
Tommy
then,
P, no.
No. And then I do a writing class every other week on a Friday morning with an older group, mostly women, 2 men, and up in the Roxborough Road. It's in the back of an old industrial sort of estate. And I love that as well, So really all I do is I give them an essay to write, and they go off. They have 2 weeks to write it, and we come back and we chat, and then everybody reads their essay and we talk about it, and etc. etc. And that's brilliant as well,
And how does writing in general fit into your life? Like, what's your...
Well, I'm not a writer,
Not.
I'm not. I'm not a writer. No, not at all. I have kind of in the back of my head. Yeah, I'd love to write something sometime, but I did a book about 7 or 8 years ago with a lad from Miltown Malbay. Donnacha Rinn is his name. His father's man called Davok Rinn.
I know the family. Very well.
Yeah.
And Luca Bloom being
he's
part of that family.
Yeah. And it was called Being Donnacha.
I've actually have a copy of it. Yeah.
Have you?
Yeah, it's phenomenal. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I did that book with Donnacha, and I loved doing that. Donnacha and I were still are great friends, although I haven't seen him in years. I don't go down there anymore for various reasons, my own problems. And it's nothing sinister.
It's another podcast.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It's nothing sinister at all. I just have this kind of... I have a house down there, and it's like one of these things. The longer you put off going back to see it, the more difficult it becomes,
Yeah.
And it's been going on for years now, and I haven't gone down there, so I haven't gone to see Donnacha either.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm glad.
But it sounds like you're closing in on it.
Yeah. But I'm glad you have that book. So I did that. So yeah, I have a very full life.
Yeah, it sounds like do you have any time to
yeah, I do.
What do you do to...
Rory, there's loads of downtime as well.
If that's joyful, I guess it's giving you energy. It's not taking energy.
It's downtime. I have a lot of downtime as well. On the art front, last year, a number of years ago, I made a postcard every day, a cut-out postcard. I get coloured paper and I do these cutouts. And I call it post art. And in 2011, I think, I made a postcard every day and I sent it to somebody. And the message was always the same. It was, Dear Rory, I'm doing a series where each day I make and send a piece. Today is your day. Lots of love, Tom Prendergast. And I sent one out every single day, 365 of these things. I sent them to various people. And that was that. The beginning of last year, I started making a postcard every day as well. And I didn't send them out. I kept them. And they came in sort of monthly installments. And then I made a little box at the end of the month, January. And I would have a little quote, a little line from a song or whatever on the back of each one. So I have those at home. I have 12 of those at home, January through December. And I've just been asked to go and give a talk, and this is kind of a preparation for that, to give a talk in Limerick at the end of next month, the 20th of the next month, by a lad called Cayman Walsh, who's another one of these sort of underground guys who does things quietly, sort of a community leader as well. So I have those, and then at the beginning of this year, I repeated that, but instead of doing one postcard, and they're only like business-sized postcards, I started doing two. And I'll see where that goes, you know. So, I wake up every morning, and the first thing I do is go downstairs and I make my postcards, and they can take 10 minutes or an hour.
So
or 2 hours.
you're not waking up and going on Facebook and getting...
Oh, no, not at all, not at all. And
pulled into all that.
No, and my mobile phone just broke the other day, and my computer broke about 2 weeks ago, and I haven't got either of them fixed.
I love that, because we had an email exchange about organising. You didn't know me from Adam, and I said, well, you were due to come to Clare, and you said, I said, well, give me your number just in case anything happens or any of that crack. He said, well, the number's broke, so you probably won't get me. Let's just see how it goes. And I like that. I like the idea of letting go of the phone and just saying you meet somebody in such a place and they probably will be there. Because that's what you said.
And that's the way it used to be, you know? Yeah. That's the way it used to be.
Humanity got by for tens of thousands of years.
Yeah, that's the way it used to be, you know? And obviously everything has changed, you know, and I don't do Facebook. I do email and I text and I talk on the phone. As little of it as possible.
Yeah.
I have a bit of an obsession with Donald Trump since he became president of the US. And I look him up every day, you know, just to see.
Every day?
Most days, yeah.
Right.
Just to see what the latest is, you know.
And what's your take on him?
Oh, God.
Where do we start?
Yeah,
should we go there?
You know, I don't admire the man at all. I think he's a very dangerous individual. And I think he's given license to a lot of people to become a lot more dangerous than they possibly were in the past. And it's kind of, I don't know, it's opened up a real nest, I think. Very, very dangerous, I think. Anyhow, Facebook, all that stuff, I don't know.
And just staying with the Trump and the political situation, like how do you think where do you see the opportunities to respond to that rather than sort of give way to it?
Again, Rory, you know, you ask yourself, you know, what do I do? What do I contribute to this world, you know? And I've listed a few things that I do, but I make these little postcards every day, and that's my contribution to the world. Nobody has seen them yet. They will see them, and you know, I'll go out and I'll give talks about these things. It's funny the way things happen. You know, this guy Cayman Walsh, he called me there about 2 weeks ago, and he said, "Tom, will you come and give a talk in Ormston House, which is a venue in Limerick?" And I said, "Yeah, I will." And I'm thinking about, you know, how I'm going to present this thing. It'll revolve around the postcards, and it's great. These postcards are really, they're kind of like little prompt cards for me. You know, you put them up and you talk about each one individually, and what they mean to you. And
reminds me of Robert Shetterly. He's a guy I interviewed on this podcast, actually. I'd encourage people to check him out. But geez, I better remember what his project's called. It's oh God, I don't remember offhand, so please forgive me, everyone. But he basically he has painted great Americans or brave Americans, people he would say courageous. Some of them well known, others not so well known. And I saw him at a centre in Vermont where he speaks about he holds up the painting and he just speaks about this person and the painting. It's like bringing art into life and storytelling through art, and it's his way of channeling his emotional and his political responses into these portraits. He's an incredible guy. I'm going to look him up just so I can do justice to the name of his project. But Yeah, I think art has an often undervalued role to play, and people might say, "Sure, what's that going to achieve?" But it does open up channels and conversation, and intrigues, and brings people into maybe a consciousness that they weren't thinking about.
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes it's presented in a way that makes it difficult for people to approach art, with capital A-R-T.
And do you think artists are partially responsible for that?
They can be.
Yeah.
I went to art college, and fortunately I was what's called a mature student when I went. I was almost 50 years of age. So I had a good bit of experience behind me. And I just saw it differently, I suppose, than people coming straight out of school. And when you're out of school, you're still easily influenced. And I think, most people that go to art college, Rory, they leave, and that's the end of their art life. There's only a handful that will actually pursue it, continue to pursue it. And I sometimes think that I sometimes think that I'd love to do some kind of a presentation, not even an exhibition, called Losers Lounge. And it's about those people that went to art college and then just left it behind them, and still in the back of their heads they think, okay, I'll do it sometime, and keep putting it off and off and off.
Do you think education does that sometimes? I often queried, actually it's a great privilege for a start to have any kind of an education, because there's many that don't get any. But I do wonder sometimes, do we overvalue the type of education that's being presented? You send 17-year-olds off to get a degree in X, Y, or Z, and suddenly they're a qualified psychologist or a business person or artist. Whereas, life doesn't work like that. You can't come out with a certificate at 21 and know all the thing that there is to know. I do feel that there's... And I do think it is happening. I think the internet has a big role to play as well, about finding out education in other forms and in other ways and at other times in your life. And I think adult education is a big part of that. Like, people going back to classes in the evening, at the weekend. But yeah, I've seen that. I suppose what I also wanted to touch on there or get at was, I've seen people lose the impulse to be an artist or a musician because they went and did the music college or the art college, and they got told a very dishonest way of what it means, and maybe killed their dream.
That's what I'm saying. Most people that I saw going to art college, they finish, they get a degree, but that's the end of it. But
something's going on there, It is. There's a message being encoded of what success might look like. Rather than, the Busker, Dylan School of Folk, Road, Luca Bloom, whatever it might be. And then I don't want to completely devalue it either, No,
not at all. Not at all. But I suppose I found art college not rigorous enough. It didn't really get down to what we're talking about here. It didn't have these you didn't have these conversations in art college, with your tutors and whatever. Sit down and really talk about this stuff, what it really means to be an artist, because it's a lifelong commitment. Luca Bloom is a great example, actually. When before I went to America, I was living in Galway. I went to college up there and blah, blah, blah. And Luca came, and I saw him playing at one stage. And he did this version of Danny Boy, and he recorded it, and I think it was on Mulligan Records. Danny Boy, we all know Danny Boy, it's sort of overdone and whatever. But he did this version of it that really stuck with me. I was like, wow, this is really a really unique interpretation of this song. And then I was in America, and I saw an ad for Luca Bloom, formerly Barry Moore, playing at the Red Line on a Wednesday night. And And I said, I'm going to go see this guy. This is the guy that did this version of Danny Boy that I loved. And I went and saw him, and he had recreated himself. He'd become a completely different performer, had this guitar style that was really unique, really powerful, written these really good songs. And he was living down in Georgetown, I think it was, outside Washington, D.C. And he was travelling up to New York every Wednesday night to do this gig. And I went, and I was running the record company at the time, and I went to see him, and I was like, flipping hell, look at this guy. He's really sort of, as I said, recreated himself, become something completely new. And I brought my business partner the next week, and he was like, wow, look at this guy, acoustic guitar, solo. And then I brought another friend of mine, Michael Hill, who was an A&R guy at Warner Brothers. Warner's signed him, Glenn and I became his managers. But Luca told me this story. He said he had a day job once in his life where he was a petrol pump attendant in some garage up in Newbridge, County Kildare, where he was from. And at the end of the day, in his pocket, he had 3 or 4 petrol caps. And he realised, that the owner of the garage realised, son, this is not for you. Here's your wages. No need to come back. That was the only job he ever had in his life. And he realised there and then that he wasn't cut out for this kind of thing. And he's been a musician all his life, has never worked a day job, ever. You know? Pretty flippin' amazing thing to do. Phenomenal.
I think he's played his first gig, from what I recall, at 15.
Yeah.
And he's been going, he been going 50 years?
Yeah,
vegan?
he has, yeah, pretty much, yeah.
And you know, another part of this story is that he sat on the exact same cushion that you're sitting on now, telling me a lot of the backstory of all this.
Yeah.
There's a lovely poetry in that there.
Yeah. And you didn't know that I had anything got to do with him.
I didn't know you knew him at all,
Yeah.
And this being Ireland, it's not a terrible surprise, but it's a very direct link to the other part of the story. And then, as is the other brother, Christy Murrow's also in the story here. But we're all connected anyway.
Yeah.
Everyone. Yeah. And through postcards and otherwise.
Yeah.
And just to return also to that, Robert Shetterly, I want to kind of do justice to his project because it's called Americans Who Tell the Truth. Mm-hmm. So it's the name is hugely important there. He's painting Americans who tell the truth, whether it be Edward Snowden or other people, you know.
Yeah.
And then going speaking about them and touring them around. Yeah, I kind of feel like the darkness that would surround the Trump era and the versions of that we see in our own country and other countries, quite often it's very hard to know how to respond politically because they've kind of mastered a lot of the apparatus and control. I think artists are well placed to go in and seize the levers somehow because by definition of being creative, you can see angles, opportunities, ways of looking at it that maybe someone else can't see. I kind of feel there's always been a role for art.
Yeah, I don't know, you know, if that's the exclusive sort of
not just artists. I mean,
artists,
we do it through community development. We still need a political response. Mm-hmm. I just feel like whether it be music or poetry or books, literature, they all matter. You know, hugely.
Well, it's interesting being here, you know, because just down the road is the Doonbeg Golf Club, which is owned by Donald Trump, and the people love him down there, and it's understandable why, because he provides jobs, you know, where there weren't jobs. Myself, I think it's a shame that they're probably compelled to feel like this, because you probably go 2 miles at either side of Doonbeg and people were like, oh, this guy is totally bogus. But, you know, and it really bothers me. I mean, Mitch McConnell, Lindsey Graham, all these Republicans who support him. And it blows my mind. You know, right now he's being impeached and they're talking about this guy, John Bolton, who was his what? Secretary of Defence or some bloody thing. And he knows what he did as far as the Ukraine is concerned. And these guys are denying this. And I'm like, what is going on? You know, why?
Well, there's
why can't
duplicity and complicity, and we have that in our own politicians. Like they were quick to roll out the carpet for him and Pence when he was here, and we know who these people are.
I know.
And I think like if you look at the history of Doonbeg, you'll see famine and poverty and emigration. So there is a current there at play. But at the same time, where do you draw these lines, you know?
Yeah. I mean, you know, we have these big American companies, Amazon, Google, and whatever, in Dublin. And I suppose, you know, the politicians are afraid to speak out in case these guys move away. But Amazon is owned by Jeff Bezos, who's an enemy of Donald Trump's. You know, I don't think he would be bothered. I don't think it would bother him at all.
Yeah.
If Leo Varadkar were to say, "Oh, you know, Donald Trump is a schmuck."
Yeah.
You know?
And there's a way of also saying it in a way where you're speaking the truth, but you're still being respectful to the American people or to the voters and so on.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, I'm a US citizen, you know.
Yeah.
I was an illegal alien in the United States for a number of years. And there was an amnesty in the mid-1980s, which I availed of, and I got a green card, and then I became a US citizen. And I know what it's like to be an illegal alien, albeit a white male illegal alien, you know, which is a huge privilege, you know, huge privilege.
Yeah.
You know, if I was Mexican or African, Somalian, you know, of whom there are thousands in the United States at the moment, it's a lot different, you know. There's a huge amount of racism involved, huge amount.
Because our politicians will campaign for 30,000 undocumented Irish, which are by and large mostly white.
Yeah.
As they should be, they should campaign for them. But there's 30,000 or 50,000 undocumented people in Ireland as we speak.
Exactly.
Cleaning our hotels at 5 a.m. or, you know, working in petrol stations overnight. And
exactly.
So
deal with it, you know?
Yeah.
Deal with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's dreadful. You know, you have these direct provision centres. You know, there's a few of them in Limerick. There's one in Knocklasheen. There's another one in the middle of town, the old Henratty's Hotel. And I pass by it every day and I see these guys just hanging around, you know.
Hanging around doesn't lead to anywhere good.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all, you know. And fortunately, you know, I was in America and I didn't have to hang around, you know. I was able to work as a bartender, albeit, you know, underground and whatever, and staying out of trouble. And there was always that fear, you know, if I was driving a car, that was the great thing. I got a driver's license. I managed to get a driver's license. So that was ID enough. But you were always afraid in case I crashed the car and I'd have to go, you know.
Yeah, and then you do hear the stories of such and such. I mean, we all know people that know people and have family members that can't come home when their granny dies.
Oh yeah, I was like that. Fortunately, nobody died, you know, where I would have had to come home. But I couldn't go home, you know. Yeah. For 5.5 years I was there and I couldn't leave. Yeah. And even that time when I went home, I was still illegal and I left and I had to sort of go back in again illegally. It was a lot easier in those days. But as I said, you know, I was white, man, and could speak English. Huge bonus, you know, huge bonus that we all take for granted, you know. But getting back, you know, to the other thing, you know, what do I do every day? What role do I have in this? And I get up every day, I make my little postcard and I accumulate them. And that's my contribution at the moment. You know, that's for me. The other thing is, you know, I do the writing classes with you and I do the volunteer work. But the other one is just me.
Can I ask you about the daily postcards? I'm guessing that would have, you know, opened up all these other conversations and reunions and responses. You know, that somebody's going to write back to you or call you and go, Jesus, Tom, that really touched me. I was actually having a bad day because...
I had those, you know.
You must have.
It was fantastic.
So you're getting back tenfold probably.
Sometimes, you know, not everybody.
And that's obviously not looking for it.
Yeah. And I did, you know. I got a postcard from one woman months after and she said, I had this postcard, she said, and up on my mantelpiece and I'd look at it every day and I loved it. But I had no idea. And then through circumstances, I found out and it just started off another whole conversation, you know.
Because it's a lovely thing to receive something in the post, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I can guarantee you now there's somebody going to listen to this and they're going to take some kind of action based on it, you know, whether it be a postcard, a letter, a painting or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I think that's how we just keep the story going.
Yeah.
And then in 30 years' time, such and such's daughter or son might say, well, my father heard this chat with a guy called Tom once and he planted the seed, and then, I don't know, like, you know, and so the story
and
of...
that's the way it goes, you know. That's the way it goes. And, you know, I said this, I was in America last year. I hadn't been back there in like 13 years, and I went back with Katie, and, you know, I stayed with my old business partner, and we were, Glenn and I, we were in a building in an art gallery, beautiful art gallery up in Harlem, where Glenn lives now, beautiful. And there were a bunch of people there. And I had been at dinner with Glenn and a bunch of friends the previous night, and I said, actually, I'm really a shy person, you know, I'm really shy. And art college actually opened me up, you know, because you had to present your work and talk about it, and it was terrifying to me, absolutely terrifying when I was in art college. Actually, my first day in art college, I had applied, and I got in on a photography portfolio. I always carried a little camera with me, and I used to take pictures, and a good background, you know. I was in America and ran a record company, and they were like, oh, this would be a cool guy to have, 50 years of age, blah, blah, blah. And so the first day in, we all the new students would gather down in the church, and we were divided up to our new classes, and I had this woman, Jenny Baker was her name, who was my tutor, and I went up the stairs, and I sat in the back of the class as far away from her as I could. The usual, you know, keep out of the way, keep the head down, don't be recognised. And she immediately set us to work, and she gave us a project, and it was all about perspective, and she explained what she wanted, and I was sitting there, and the sweat was pouring down my back. I was like, if I had been by the door, I would have ran out and I would have not come back, but I was in the back of the room. And she said, off you go now. And I was sitting there, and I was like, oh, jeez, what do I do? Do I bluff this as I would have done in school, you know? Or do I own up? And I just put my hand up and I said, sorry, Jenny, I said, I don't really understand what you want us to do. And she said, which bit don't you understand, Tom? And I said, I don't understand any of it. I don't know what you're talking about. And she goes, great. Now we have someplace to start. And she explained to me again, you know, me personally. And that was sort of my introduction to art college, you know. And I knew nothing. I didn't know there was different kinds of paper. I didn't know there were different kinds of pencils. I knew nothing, absolutely nothing. You know?
I guess I kind of feel probably harsh on formal education, and this in some ways redeems there are many positive dimensions.
Yeah, and you know, as coming out of school, you probably wouldn't have had bravery. You know, I was being brave. You know, to ask that kind of a question. The kids, when they're out of school, they're fearless as well. You know, somebody said to me once, it isn't, what's the saying again? It isn't youth that's wasted on the young at all. It's fearlessness, you know. And you are kind of fearless when you're young. You know, you think you can do anything, you know. And I didn't have that on my side at the time. But anyhow, you know, I had to talk about my work in college, and it was really daunting, you know. But it gave me the courage, you know. I wouldn't have done something like this, you know, 20 years ago, come down here and talk like this to anybody, you know.
And obviously then it rippled right through your life to opening a record shop, and then, you know, when you're running a record label and you had some very big acts, you kind of had to deal with some high rollers.
Oh yeah.
So what was that experience like? Just
it was fantastic. You know, I love music. When I was a kid, you know, when I was like 11, 12 years of age, I lived in Limerick, and I would go down to the traffic lights in the main sort of cross-section in town every Sunday when the show bands were passing through, and hope that they would stop at the red lights, and I would run up to the window and I'd knock at the window and say, can I have a photo, please?
Wow.
And they'd give me a photo, you know?
Yeah.
I remember following Butch Moore, you know, into the toilet in Cruz's hotel.
Wow,
so
the record label story was written a long time before.
It was. I was kind of obsessed with this stuff, you know, music and music paraphernalia, and, you know, the history of popular music and all this stuff.
I think that speaks to following the thread as well. Like, if you see a young girl or guy that has that level of passion and interest, is to nurture it, you know. Can I ask, Tom, like, how I do have a sense of, like, this word success has come up a few times in conversations, and it can be problematic because we all have different definitions of success, you know, and society tends to think of it as big and wealthy. But it can also mean small and quiet and peace of mind, and no one knows your name.
To me, it's doing what you want to do. It's doing what you want to do.
But you did have the societal version to some degree as well.
Oh yeah.
The big
I could have ended up as a civil servant or working in the bank, you know, and maybe I'd have been happy. I wouldn't have mind being a teacher, you know. But I could have easily, you know, and I would have missed all these opportunities.
Yeah. Where, at the height of the record label, what was life like for you? At the height of back to the word success, but the height of it's kind of...
You know, it's like everything, Rory. You know, as I said, there's a lot of downtime. You know, to this day, you know, there are days when I'm like, oh, what do I do? You know, what's going on today? You know, not an awful lot. And it was the same in the record company. I was going to work every day, going to the office, you know, doing what I had to do. The most exciting part of it to me was going to clubs and seeing bands, you know, either the bands that I was working with or finding new bands, you know, and nurturing that.
So
and
you were
that.
almost a traditional A&R, keeping it real.
Yeah.
And was your partner more sort of complementing that with the business?
He was. He was kind of the business guy, you know. I kind of let him do that. Or it happened organically.
Well, it's a great balance.
Oh, yeah, it was great. Yeah. But he was an A&R guy as well. You know, but the best part of it, we were both living in Hoboken. We would go into New York a few nights, see bands, you know, and we would put tapes in, you know, all these tapes that would arrive, and we'd put them in to listen to them in the car. And I love that. The two of us just flying in and out of New York and driving around New York and listening to new tapes, you know. It was like, wow, listen to this. This is really good. Let's contact these guys, you know.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it was fantastic, you know. Absolutely. And we got really lucky. I started the record label, it's called Bar None Records, to put out a record by Glenn. The first band I loved when I went there were a band called The Individuals, who were Glenn's band, and they were happening for a while. And I'd go to see them all the time. And I ended up living in the same house as Glenn. You know, imagine this, you know, like your favourite band and you're living in the same house as the principal in the band. You know, I was like, wow, this is brilliant. And then they broke up. And he was just sort of recording songs on his own, and he called it Rage to Live. And I went to him and I said, Glenn, I had the record shop. I said, listen, I want to start a record label and I'd love to put out your record. And he was like, well, yeah, fantastic. So we put it out and it did okay. And then he said, I'll join you. I'll be your partner in the record company. I said, fantastic. Like, look at this. And he came across this group called They Might Be Giants, who were two guys. One guy playing accordion and baritone saxophone, and the other guy playing electric guitar. And they had a guy doing sounds and extra stuff for them, tape machines. And really, really unique, great songwriters. And they were really ambitious, really smart, really talented, and really hardworking. And that's a winning combination, you know. So Glenn and I, we found these two guys, and we put out their first album. And in the first year, we sold 10,000 records, which for a small record label was really very, very successful.
And people bought records then?
They did, yeah.
It wasn't Spotify.
It wasn't CDs even. We didn't even do cassettes. We just did vinyl. And then it was the very beginning of MTV, and they made a video, and it was for a song called Don't Let's Start. And MTV was new, and it was kind of taking anything. So they put on this video of They Might Be Giants. As I said, in the first year, we sold 10,000 records. In a month, we sold 100,000 records for They Might Be Giants. We were up and running. It was amazing. And as I said, they were hardworking, talented, ambitious, and smart. And I used to drink at the time. I was never much of a drinker, but I was in a club one night, and They Might Be Giants were after playing, and I was having a few drinks and getting a bit drunk probably. And I was looking at these two guys, and I realised all of this. And I said, I have to stop drinking if I want to keep up with these guys. And I never drank again. You know, I stopped drinking.
In that moment?
In that moment, yeah. I just said, okay, you got to be focused.
There's your essay on perception there, you know, as in... Because that story has happened in many other stories where the individual didn't make that choice.
Yeah.
And blew it.
Blew it, yeah. And I realised that. I was like, if I'll be getting messy and all this kind of stuff, and I won't be able to keep up with these guys.
Stay sharp, stay focused, yeah.
Stop. And I never drank again, you know.
It's a big thing, yeah. I mean, I'd still take a little drink here and there and enjoy a bit of a whiskey every now and then, but I did realise several years ago that if you want to be serious about your stuff, you know.
Yeah, you got to be focused, you know. Your mind has got to be clear, you know.
Yeah.
And I stopped, and we went on to have great success with them when we put out a second album, and you know, the first day it was released, we shipped 100,000 copies, you know, out to our distributors. We were successful. This was like 1986.
By any definition.
We were a success. You know, afterwards we put out a lot of records that hardly sold 1,000.
Of course, yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And they were all good records, you know. Freddie Johnston, he went on to be signed by Elektra. He had a big hit with a song called Bad Reputation. We did well with him. We had Yola Tengo. We had one record of theirs. Great record, Fake Book. But we had groups we had Drink Me, who were one of my favourite bands, another duo. Sold nothing. Brilliant records, though. Absolutely brilliant. The Original Sins, Kate Jacobs, Lonesome Val, all these fantastic people. Then we had Edwyn Collins, that song, A Girl Like You, we put that out. Sold a ton of records, you know, ton of records.
That was massive.
Yeah, massive.
Yeah.
We had Tinder Sticks.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, first album and a soundtrack called Ninette Bunny. Bill Drummond. Do you know Bill Drummond? Yeah. He had the KLF, the biggest selling band in Europe at one stage, but we put out a solo album by him that sold maybe 1,500 copies. Great record, you know, great record. One of the most interesting guys around, you know.
Famous for burning £1 million.
He did, yeah.
Was it $1 million?
$1 million, yeah. Wow. And I saw a film that he made this summer, and we were talking in the cafe earlier on. You were talking about these guys in India, you know.
Sadhus.
Yeah. But Bill, I saw a film that he made this year called Best Before Death. And it's about a journey that he's on. And he went to India and he makes soup and bread for people, just the public, and a bed and beds. He constructs a bed. And it's fascinating. Absolutely. He's a fascinating guy.
Wow. Yeah, check that out.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. It's brilliant. He's a brilliant guy.
I mean, it sounds to me, Tom, that in many ways you're making soup, you know, and we're all called to make soup in whatever format or form or ingredients.
Yeah.
And you do it through your different offerings.
Yeah, and sometimes, you know, I certainly feel lost a lot of the time. You know, it's like, what am I doing? You know, what's my purpose here? But then I do these little things, you know, and this latest round of postcards has really brought that home to me. You know, they're tiny little things, but they're meaningful. You know, they really are meaningful for me, and that's the most important thing. You know, it's what I do for me, and if I can sort of give that out to the world in some little way, and, you know, no matter how many people can be touched by this, then everything is fine, you know. Yeah. Like that little postcard I gave you this morning. What does it say on this thing? Everything is going to be all right, you know. There's an artist, I can't remember what his name is, but he did this big neon sign, huge, and he placed it outside a church, and, you know, that's what it said. Everything is going to be all right. And I think, like, you know, that is, you know, what the church, the intention of the church is, isn't it? Is to preach that, you know, everything is going to be all right. Yeah.
So there you go, folks. The Church of Tom Prendergast.
The Church of the Sacred Bleeding Heart of Jesus.
Preach. Well, I'll certainly turn up for your next sermon anytime. And it's been an absolute pleasure. And I really appreciate your time and wisdom and stories.
Yeah, it was brilliant.
And maybe we'll do it again in Limerick sometime.
And, we will be meeting each other.
We'll make a dance out of it as well.
Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Hello, Rory here again. Thanks for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed it, please do share with your friends, send around through social media, text message, email, whatever you can. It all counts. It all helps spread the good vibes, make sure people can share the wisdom from people like Tom, and please do check out the archive of all the other great episodes. Big special thanks to all the donors and patrons, anyone who's chipped in €5, $5, 10 or more. Some people do it once off, some people do it monthly, and it's all appreciated. It really helps power things on. I've got a nice lineup of conversations lined up for the rest of the year, and I look forward to sharing them with you. So thanks again, folks. Here's to you, and here's to the journey of love and courage.